Before installing a new or replacement tank, consider the factors that will affect the tank's performance over its service life. These may include what size should the tank be, what regulations affect the installation, where will the tank be installed, what factors will affect corrosion, and what type of tank is best suited for the site. After investigating each of these factors, discuss the options and your recommendations with the customer. Regarding factor number 1, tank size. Tanks should be large enough to minimize delivery frequency, and yet small enough so that the fuel in storage doesn't degrade over time. Larger underground storage tanks are often replaced with single or multiple above-ground storage tanks. Smaller tanks require more frequent deliveries, but they reduce the aging of the fuel. Fuel has a shelf life that is influenced by heat, oxygen, microorganisms, metals, and oxides. When these influences combine with moisture, an environment for creating tank sludge is created. This sludge not only causes tank corrosion, it can get into the piping, the filters, the pumps, and the nozzle, causing operational problems. This is the primary reason the importance of regular removal of accumulated water is recommended throughout this course. Tank size should reflect the balance between delivery frequency and the time the fuel is stored. NORA suggests that the best way to properly size a fuel storage tank is to divide the annual consumption by 3. For example, if a customer is expected to consume 750 gallons or less, 750 divided by 3 equals 250. A tank no larger than 275 gallons is recommended. If a customer is expected to consume 1,000 gallons, 1,000 divided by 3 equals 333. So a 275 or a 330 gallon tank will suffice. Using this formula helps assure the fuel in the tank is reasonably fresh and resources are not challenged by excess deliveries. Keep in mind that even with this method of sizing, at any given time, some of the fuel in the tank will be over a year old. In the case of underground storage tanks, or an above-ground storage tank with the fuel supply line piped through the top, a portion of the tank contents, fuel residues, and oxidized fuel may be much older. Of course, there are unique situations which may warrant changes to this formula, including locations of the tank and the customer's preferences or concerns. In areas close to salt water, it may be prudent to install even smaller tanks and monitor for accumulations of water more frequently, in an effort to minimize potentially increased corrosive effects from the tank breathing salt air. The key is to balance delivery frequency with reasonable product turnover so aging of the fuel is minimized. Let's take a look at the second factor in choosing the right tank, codes and regulations. And it is important to always follow the regulations from the authority having jurisdiction. Pay particular attention to required setbacks and clearances from fuel-fired equipment, including gas dryers, stoves, etc., property lines, buildings, including doors and windows, air intakes, gas and electric service ports, and combustion exhausts. The third factor in tank selection is its location. Tanks can be installed indoors or outdoors, and outdoor tanks can be installed either above the ground or underground. But where space and applicable regulations allow, NORA believes the benefits associated with indoor installations support a policy of installing tanks indoors whenever possible. The following things should be considered when selecting a location for a new or replacement tank. The tank's proximity to drains, wells, and/or water courses. The tank and the associated piping should be located so that should an accidental release occur, fuel will not have a pathway to a surface water body, a potable well, a storm drain system, or a septic system. Have the homeowner identify any yard drains, sump pits, foundation drains, wells, or septic systems on the property. In the picture here, the tank has a number of issues, and the white rectangular box on the concrete slab is a water well. These tanks should be replaced, and the new ones should be relocated and piped properly. Basement sump pump pits and foundation drains can provide a pathway for the fuel to travel when a release from an indoor tank occurs. Oftentimes, if the pump is relieving water pressure from beneath the floor, elevating the top of the sump to above the floor surface is all that is needed to prevent the potential of fuel entering. A location criteria that is often overlooked is the distance from the closest safe place for the delivery vehicle to park. Remember to consider the length of the delivery hose and that the hose must be able to reach the fill in all weather conditions. Select a location where the tank and piping won't be subject to damage from weather and other physical damage. The accessibility of the tank to facilitate inspection and servicing needs to be considered. Areas that may present the risk of accelerated corrosion should be avoided. Accessible above-ground tank installations have an advantage over in-ground installations in that it's relatively easy to conduct tank inspection, concerns can be quickly noticed and corrected, and above-ground tank installations are less costly than in-ground tank installations. The fourth factor in tank location is the potential for corrosion. Factors that cause corrosion should always be taken into consideration when selecting the best type of tank for a particular location. The National Fire Protection Association requires that underground storage tanks be protected from exterior corrosion by a properly designed, installed, and maintained cathodic protection system, special coating, or fabricated from an approved or listed corrosion-resistant material or system. Fiberglass tanks and steel tanks manufactured to the Steel Tank Institute's STIP 3, ACT 100, and ACT 100U standards meet the requirement. If an indoor installation is not viable, or the customer prefers that an above-ground storage tank be installed outside, the location should be based on regional weather and the elements that most affect external corrosion. It's best to situate the tank where effects of radical temperature change can be avoided. A shady spot that has some protection from weather is ideal. The selected location should provide sufficient room to inspect all sides of the tank, sufficient room to avoid debris or snow and ice from collecting on the tank, and sufficient access to facilitate keeping the area beneath the tank free of debris. The tank in this picture was installed right against a wall. While above-ground storage tanks normally corrode from the inside out, this tank was the exception to the rule because of an improper installation. In some instances, suggesting the customer consider having the tank installed within an enclosure, or recommending the customer consider a non-metallic tank system can help minimize the risk of premature tank obsolescence. The polyethylene steel tank in this picture appears to have some issues. The manufacturer's instructions say that the base should extend at least 6 inches beyond the edge of the tank, and that the tank should be a minimum of 2 inches from all walls to allow for expansion and inspection. The final tank selection factor is the type of tank that's best suited for the application. Let's look at above-ground tanks. Well, the most common above-ground storage tank is the UL80 model 275-gallon Obround shown here. And while it might look nice to have the plant growth around the tank, it is not advisable because it makes the tank difficult to inspect and can accelerate corrosion. These tanks are generally available in 120 to 330 gallon capacities. Tanks such as this one that are manufactured with only a coated primer should be painted with an industrial quality coating before the installation. The tank shown in the middle is the UL142 model designed for flammable liquids. These tanks are the same as the UL80 tanks, except that they include a 3-inch tapping for an emergency vent. Emergency vents are not required for combustible liquids, but UL142 tanks have a label attached that says, "Do not plug this tapping." Some authorities having jurisdiction have refused to approve installations when UL142 tanks used for fuel have a plug in the 3-inch tapping. There is no advantage to using a UL142 instead of a UL80, so it's advisable to avoid installing them. And the cylindrical tanks are also available. UL80 tanks typically have a 1/2-inch outlet at the bottom of the tank. This tapping is normally used for the fuel supply connection. if it is not used for the fuel supply, it should be piped to facilitate water removal. Merely making the fitting liquid tight by the insertion of a plug defeats the purpose of the design. This image shows a manufacturer's illustration of how this tapping should be connected. Above-ground storage tanks are available with a polyurethane coating to better protect the outside of the tank against rust and corrosion. Another improvement to the UL80 tank is the double bottom tank with leak detection. These tanks have a second bottom to contain a leak should the internal corrosion create a breach of the steel integrity. A sensor installed in the interstitial space triggers an alarm and provides an alert that the inner tank has been compromised. Polyethylene steel tanks are comprised of two separate but integral units. The primary internal storage tank is constructed of a seamless polyethylene, which is both compatible with heating fuel and is not electrically conductive. Thus, it is not susceptible to the electrochemical mechanics of corrosion. This tank is within a secondary galvanized steel enclosure which provides structural support for and protection of the polyethylene tank while providing secondary containment should the polyethylene tank leak. And fiberglass above-ground storage tanks are available for both outdoor and indoor applications. These are UV and fire resistant and they do not corrode. They are available in 240 and 300 gallon sizes and both single and double wall construction. The double wall model has a visual sight glass to facilitate inspection. This section addresses underground storage tanks that are currently available. NFPA 30 stipulates that underground storage tanks and their piping be protected from corrosion. Unprotected steel tanks are not compliant with the requirements of the major code bodies. While these tanks provide many years of secure storage, age combined with the inability to visually inspect them resulted in tank failures along with other issues that are addressed in this course. For underground installations, NORA recommends 7-gauge STI P3, ACT 100 or fiberglass tanks. STI P3 tanks are steel tanks protected with a factory-installed corrosion protection system designed by the Steel Tank Institute. These tanks feature a 3-part protection system: an exterior dielectric coating, factory-installed electrical isolation bushings in the tank fittings, and sacrificial anodes designed to provide protection of exposed steel in the event of an isolated coating failure. The sacrificial anode protection needs to be tested at installation and periodically thereafter. STI P3 tanks are available in single and double wall configurations, and they carry a standard 10-year warranty against failure due to corrosion, and a 30-year warranty is available. The ACT 100 tank uses an advanced multi-component fiberglass reinforced plastic coating applied directly to the exterior of the steel tank to provide corrosion protection. Since the 100 mil high-impact abrasion-resistant coating is significantly thicker than the coating of an STI P3 tank, these tanks do not come equipped with sacrificial anodes. ACT 100 tanks are also available in single or double wall configuration. The ACT 100U is another version of a coated steel tank. In this case, a 70 mil coating of urethane is used to isolate the steel from the electrochemical mechanisms of corrosion. Like the ACT 100, the tank is not equipped with sacrificial anodes and is reliant on the superior coating for corrosion protection. The urethane is thinner and softer than the FRP coating of the ACT 100, so a protective material is installed beneath the tank to cushion it on the backfill. The ACT 100U is also available in both single wall and double wall configurations. Take a close look at this picture. This was a tank that was buried for many years, and as you can see, there are tank leg brackets. This is an above-ground storage tank. It was never intended for underground use. You can also see pencils stuck in the bottom. They were put there to mark where the tank was leaking. There were several more pencils inserted, but the holes in the tank bottom were too big for them to stay in. Above-ground storage tanks are much thinner than underground storage tanks, and they don't have the coatings to protect them when installed underground. Underground storage tanks require backfill to provide support. So do not install an above-ground storage tank underground, and do not install an underground storage tank above ground. Fiberglass reinforced plastic, or FRP tanks, are available in the U.S. for underground installation. FRP tanks do not rust because they are made of corrosion-resistant materials, eliminating the possibility of leakage due to an either internal or external rusting. FRP tanks are available in single and double wall configurations.